live? Are we live? Okay. Alright, I just got this game running. It took a minute to get a full table. I don't always need a full table. In fact, at some point, maybe I will primarily work on Heads Up. I think Heads Up is a fantastic game. Just in general, Heads Up poker is really fun. But you need to be specifically good at it, or good specifically at it, to know ranges and all that stuff. And without that, it's not the best idea to spend a lot of time playing it. And yeah, there's things. So, welcome to day 22, the beginning of week 4 of ZenMadman's Nutty Pot Limit Omaha journey. I am here with one table of Pot Limit Omaha, 50 cent $1 on Ignition Poker. A little bit of business to take care of. A couple of new followers. One is Robin Hooded 006. 006, I assume, must be a reference to the Sean Bean character in GoldenEye, who I believe was named Alec and was, I guess, like a secret agent before Bond, because like 006 is before 007. And of course, Robin Hood being yet another great British anti-hero. And then Arawago 78, which I believe is pronounced "Here we go" 78, to which I can only say, "I'm a Wario, I'm a gonna win." Yeah, it's a Mario Kart thing. It's a Mario Kart thing. So yeah. Anyway, so I see the Ethical Panda in the chat. Welcome to everybody. We're gonna just get going in a couple of hands. I'm kind of chatting to start off the stream, but we will have we'll have cards shortly. I think the next hand I won't get dealt in. I will get dealt in the other one after that. As always, if you have any questions about any of the hands, feel free to ask them in the chat. Just try to include the whole cards that I had. It makes it a lot easier for me to know what hand you're talking about, and I will mark them for review at the end of the session, but also I might address, if it's something straightforward, I'll address it briefly, or however I address it, but otherwise, if it's more complicated, it'll go in the session review. Alright, so let's tune into this hand and check out what's going on with these other players. We've seen the player on my right open limp at least one time. Looking at the stats, nothing like nobody's 100-0 or 100-100. 3 hands, we're not going to have a whole lot of conclusions to draw just from the HUD. The HUD being these black panels that show what percentage of hands people are playing. Actually, they're not currently lining up with the players they represent, and the one next to me is for the player across from me, but they should flip once we get dealt in a hand. Ace King Deuce, pretty good flop for the pre-flop raiser, as they're going to have all the Ace Ace, the King King, a lot of Ace King combos, but they decided to check and let the other player bet and win. So yeah, now we have cards. Ace King 9-3, not a great hand, but not a terrible hand either. It's suited to the king. If it was suited to the ace, it would be a lot better. The 9 with the ace king doesn't add a whole lot of value. The 3 does match the ace. I have almost nothing on this board. If another club comes, I'll be able to represent the nut clubs. There's not a lot of money in this pot, so bets will not get very large. In fact, now I can represent nut clubs. I'm also blocking the smaller straight. I'm just going to go ahead and do that and just be like, hey, just give me the pot. Like, you're not interested, right? And against a player like this, we might be a little less inclined to do that like nut blocker bluff. But at the same time, they're going to have so many hands pre-flop. And since they checked the flop, I thought it was just a good spot to just say, give me that. Win the first hand. You can't win all the hands if you don't win the first hand. So I'm not doing a ton of over limping in the small blind, but 9976 seems like a really good candidate. That is a very interesting flop. Okay, so I'm blocking the straight, and I have top set, and I'm 6 ways. I'm also blocking middle set, which I don't want to do, which are some of my outs. Do I want to build a really big pot here? I don't think so, but... Alright, I'm going to check, and I might check raise. because I'm blocking the straight. I don't love that though. I don't know. If it checks around, I will definitely bet the turn for value. I don't think I'm going to check raise. I think my play there was was probably a check call. Now I'm just going to bomb it. I'm just going to pot it. I think my hand is very likely best. 6-3 did just make a straight. It's hard for 6-3 to call a pot size bet, and I have a 6, so it's a little harder for someone to have it. So on the river, I might go for some kind of thin value if I don't improve, and if I do make a boat, I probably will just, bet. And if it's a 7, I'll have the nuts, right? I'll have 9s full of 7s, and I'll be blocking quad 7s. If it's a 9, I'll have quads, and if it's a 5 or a 4, I don't think it's that likely that someone has a set and thus quads on the river. If it's like a big heart or an 8 or... Okay, so, speaking of a 7, two loose kind of passive players. I am blocking a lot of the stuff I want to get called by. So that kind of argues against the really big bet size. But, they're kind of loose passive players, so I'm going to go for it. And just if they make a boat, I think they'll pay me off. And if they didn't, I think they probably wouldn't have anyway. So, maybe a smaller bet size is good there on the river, just because I'm blocking so much. I'm going to hit that one for review and just talk about it briefly at the end of the session. All right, so over here, this player has now limped quite a number of hands. I am curious what people called me with on the turn too. Probably some heart draws and some, over straight draws. Maybe somebody had a hand like 6-3 and then decided on the river it wasn't worth it. I doubt anybody had 6-8, and I highly doubt anybody folded a boat. I could have made a small bet on the river. I kind of like that idea. Let's examine that. Let's ponder that notion at the end of the session. Queen, 4-4 with a suit. Two pair hands, if they're single suited, are always going to be suited to the higher pair, right? It's the only way to make a suit with two pair. I believe this is a very clear open raising hand from the cutoff. I think I'm going to raise it from most positions, and I think I can probably defend a hand like this against a 3-bet. I basically want to flop a set, so I have an overpair, which, I'm ahead of all the rundowns. They bet 7. I think that's $7 I can call. Here's the thing. I mean, I'm like 10-1 to make an overfull, and there's a chance that they check and give me some free cards, and now I'm blocking the straight, but of course ace-ace makes the nut house, right? The big full. And I think this is pretty much a spot where I'm just done. I mean, are they going to check here ever? If they have king-king, will they check? This bet size, I need to consider. I mean, I'm folding, but if you look at this, they're basically half pot bet. If I were to call this, there'd be 68 in the middle, and they have 65, so they have artfully set things up for a river shove. I think they played their hand pretty well with their range, probably. They're probably supposed to make a bet there on the flop fairly often. I'm not sure about the small bet size, but I doubt it can be that bad. King 9, 8, 7 double suited seems like one of the best literally the best King 9 combination I could possibly hold. On these ace high boards where we're heads up out of position, I think we're generally supposed to check unless we have an ace. So let's see. Can I start value betting here? I think against a player like this, yeah. I think I have a gutter. I have middle 2 pair. I don't think they're gonna have me beat almost ever at this point. After, really, what are they saying they have? My hand isn't sort of a hand that I feel like, ooh, I definitely want to get a lot of money in with. But on the other hand, I'm very kind of, this warrants a, really? I'm going to fold, but I don't know what they're pretending they have, right? They flatted pre, do they just have ace king and they think that's golden there? Maybe. I'm going to mark that hand we can review it, but mostly tomorrow I'm going to take a look and see, what did they have? And the idea isn't to like validate my fold or make me feel bad about it or whatever. Um, the idea is to, I mean, mostly I want to see whether my inclination that like there aren't a lot of really strong hands that they should have there, right? Like maybe ace king, like I don't know. It's a very weird play by them. I feel like it's going to be very draw heavy, right? Like a lot of queen jack 10 with spades. So in that case, I might want to run some equities against stuff like that and see whether, you know, whether I can bet 3-bet or whatever. I'm going to have king king there a fair amount, and I also have the ace ace advantage, so it's really hard to come up with stuff that they should be raising with. Okay, most suited aces in this spot I'm going to open, but with the deuce 7 and then the 10 also is like the worst Broadway card I can have with that. I think I'm okay just going ahead and folding that. So it's nice to see everybody in the chat saying hi. Hello to everyone. Ethical Panda, Robin Hooded, and BuffyBot. Gives a little more festive feel to the stream. Okay, so top set with some blockers to the one blocker to the diamond draw. I'm definitely going to bet this, and I think we will go 60% pots. Let's do that. I should consider the SPR a little bit more specifically. Here now I can go full pot, and I can't quite get it in on the river. If I can go this over pot size, which is allowed on. It's like the real pot size, because what? Oh, I tried to reload, but I won more than I was gonna reload, so that's fine. Yeah, on Ignition they let you bet. How much can you bet? You can bet how much should be in the pot, like basically the rake plus what's remaining in the pot. Whereas if you click the pot button, it just tells you what's actually physically in the pot at that moment, which means the rake has been taken out. Okay, we've got a draw on the right, which gets there against aces. We can see the draw had 56% equity on the flop. So the best hand, aces, was not the best hand. Right, and the way I like to think of that is the other person is ahead. Like the made hand is actually behind. Raising here might be reasonable. I'm not going to really juice the pot too much out of position. I don't think it's going to help a ton. And this board, it doesn't seem like anybody's super interested in it. I am blocking the straight. I'm not blocking any of the diamonds. I'm going to check again and maybe take a stab on the river, depending on what shall come. And if this player declares their interest in the pots, I will allow them to take it down. They did not. I have no diamond blockers. I'm going to check. I am blocking the straight, which is nice. If that was an offsuit 5, I think I would use this as a bluff. I think it would be a pretty decent bluff. I'm not going to call with my ace queen high. I do not have a straight. I can't use the 3, 4, 5, and 6 from the board. I need to use 2 cards from my hand and only 3 from the board. 3? What? There's some. Yeah. So. 3 cards. That'll get you shot in a Tarantino film, but at least people won't think you're racist on Jeopardy. Yeah. Anyway. Ace Jack 8 7 rainbow. This might be a rainbow hand I can open. It's very connected. Very connected. This is more connected, right? Aces with the king, a suit. The 4, I'm happy to be suited to the 4 instead of with the king, right? Ace 4 suited is the best way I could be suited here. All right, I'm blocking some backdoor. I'm blocking bottom set. I'm not blocking any hearts, 9s, 5s. I think this is probably a check. I mean, we've already talked about checking range. I believe I will call, though, against... Yeah, so this person, this loose passive business, we've seen them be kind of a little bit aggressive post-flop in curious situations. I wonder if I can get a check raise in now. I'm going to go for it. It's kind of questionable. Maybe I should be leading this card, right? But because... yeah, oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So they need a 3 to... I don't think I can get value from much, so I'm going to check, and I'm going to call a bet because I doubt they have me beat. It's hard for them to have a 3 and 1. I mean, they can, but let's see what they actually had. And I wonder if they had like hearts with an ace. No, they had queens. Oh, oddly enough, they did have a 3, but they had king, queen, queen 3. And no suits. So I'd say I won the maximum there. Basically just allowed them to bluff. And they do clearly have some questionable, maybe their flop bet's fine, actually. This is not really anything. And now I have the blocker to the straights. There's a bet in front of me, though. I'm just going to let it go. This is the sort of blocker situation where maybe I would want to use it as a bluff if nobody else seemed interested. But I don't really want to go out there and try and contest the pot against somebody who says they have something good. If I had like 4 sevens in my hand, right? Let's pop that up again. Nope, not tag it. Yeah, 4 sevens would mean nobody could have a straight. And then I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna bluff this one time, just this one time. I'm gonna try to outplay this person. Okay. I mean, presumably a person and not a bot. I appreciate BuffyBot in the chat, but I happen to know that is a human. Nothing against, you know, the eventual robot overlords, but you know, you're just not allowed to play poker with us mere humans. Okay, here I've got some stuff. A pair, a gut shot. Because I'm heads up, I'm going to bet this. If I was multi-way, I would likely check it back. All right, the board paired, not in a way I'm particularly fond of. It means my 9 is much less likely to be good if it gets there. I didn't really pick up anything else, right? I'm just going to go ahead and check. Sure, I now have 5 diamonds if I can use 3 from my hand and 2 for the board, but that's not a thing. They bet $1. I'm going to call $1. Like, you know, good price, well set. Unless you have less than I do, in which case, 9s. Ooh, thin, nice. 9s. They got the maximum, so good for them. But yeah, sometimes the price is just too good, and you know, maybe they had 8, 9, whatever, right? And I mean, they had an 8 and they had a 9. If they didn't have another 9, maybe they would have made that bet too. You know, 8, 9, Jack, Queen or something for a wrap, and then they're like, oh, I just want to see a showdown. That's fine. I believe on the turn, maybe I could have gotten a fold. I don't know about this player. I had enough showdown value that I was happy to kind of just see. Let's see what happens, you know. All right, ace jack 10-9, fairly pretty, single suited, so I don't think I will be 3-betting this hand, but I would certainly be calling it. And against a limp, I'm tempted to raise, but I'll just take a flop top 2, no clubs, not nary a blocker in sight. I will be blocking the straight when it comes in on the turn. Again, let's just check, let's spike something, no, and I mean, I think my hand's probably good. It might not be. It is. Okay, we win. Cool. I don't think I was going to get value from anything really in that spot. When there's a flush and a straight on board, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of betting 2 pair for value. I mean, I could turn it into a bluff, but it felt like my hand was very likely to actually be the best hand. So we just take the showdown, take the pot. And wow, flop a bunch of stuff in this hand that I folded, but not really like good happy stuff, right? I mean, I think there's a good chance that a set of 4s is good here, but you can't bet it for value. I would have been blocking my own outs with the 3. I would much rather be blocking the king, because then I'd be blocking the overset and king's full, and I could hit a king and make kings full of 4s, which would have been the nuts. Yeah. All right, and then this, I believe, will be a button open raise. Rainbow, we're not going to raise a lot of rainbow cards, but 4 cards to a king high straight, I believe, is it meets the qualifications. I have a gut shot. I'm happy to just see the gut shot come through if it does. There are a lot of turn cards that are going to be really good for me. I would really dislike getting check raised here, as there's so many turn cards that are going to be good for me. having a lot of good turn cards does make a flop bet a little bit more attractive because we're going to be able to barrel the turn. But by good turn cards, aside from the 7, I mean ones that would give me, a nice draw. Like a 9, a 10, or a jack would give me some kind of an open-ender, and a queen would give me a wrap. I think suited to the king with the 8, with the 7 in my hand, I'm going to fold. I think with an 8, I might open this. King, queen, jack is a nice 3 cards to have, but the 7 just doesn't cut it, as far as I know. We'll take a look at that. I'm not marking quite as many hands today. Again, as always, if there's a hand that, that is a particular interest to you, you can just type in the 4 hole cards and be like, I mean, you could just type those in, actually, and I'll be like, what? Oh, yeah, okay, and I'll mark it. And if you have a specific question regarding any given hand, you can ask the specific question. Okay, this would have been a pretty nice flop for my hand. Queen, jack, deuce, very disconnected. The wheel and 6 high straight came in the back door. Very unlikely for someone to have those, but possible. And I probably could have, this is a rare spot where I could have bet 2 pair with a lot of confidence on the flop, on the turn, and possibly even gone for it on the river, depending on, my opponent and how stuff played out. This is not a good hand. I will fold it. We see the player on our right has posted, so that's a good sign usually. You don't often want to do that. Just go ahead and post in the low jack, right? They're paying $1 to see this one hand. So they've basically decided I am going to call blind pre-flop is essentially what they did, with an option to raise if I like my cards. I mean, I've seen people do that, and sometimes it's been effective. Like in live games, they're like, oh, I call blind. You're like, okay, well, I raise. And then they're like, I ended up having something. But it's not strategically recommended, shall we say. I think my camera sometimes goes out of focus when I talk with my hands because they're closer to the camera than my face. So I don't know if that's a distracting thing or annoying. I enjoy talking with my hands, and I think generally it's not a bad thing to do on something like a stream. All right, I flop middle set. I'm not going to bet a ton on this board. I am going to bet here. It's very disconnected, so I will half pot it. Maybe third pot would be better. I am going with kind of these, and I'm talking with my hands. I'm going with these kind of, yeah, okay, let's just put it in. If they turned a set of 8s or flopped a set of queens, so be it. Otherwise, they probably have, they could have turned 2 pair. They can have some kind of big draw. They made top 2, and then they got there on the river, right? So we got it in with 90% equity on the turn. And you can't ask for that much more than that, right? I mean, what are you going to do? Sometimes you have the best hand, and then it doesn't remain the best hand. So, I'm happy with how I played the hand. I don't think there was too much else to consider. Stacks being so short, especially with that one player. Let's focus on this hand, though. Meant that there just wasn't a whole lot of play. There wasn't a whole lot of to think about. All right. I have a flush draw, technically, right? It's queen high. I'm blocking my own flush draw, but there's a pair on board already, so I could be drawing stone cold dead. I don't even have a straight flush draw, so very clear. Oh, and I forgot to reload. That was like the whole point of like, okay, hopefully I'll get garbage. Not quite garbage, but not a very good hand. If it folds to me, am I going to open raise this? I'm not going to over limp it because I don't think this queen high suit is going to play very well out of position. The 2 wheel cards with the ace can be good if they're like a 5 and a 4, and this would be a brilliant flop for this hand. But when it's a 2 and a 3, 2s and 3s are both very poor cards. You're going to make a lot of under straights, not a bunch of great stuff. So that's something to look out for. All right, I've got my reload now. Hopefully, if I'm going to stack someone, I am prepared to actually have the chips. I think this is an open raise from the button. Not a very good hand, right? But I've got sixes. I have a suit. A 6-5 is nice. And an ace doesn't really help in terms of the connectivity because ace 5 makes the same straight as 6-5. But an ace is just a good card. Against a limper, I'm just going to fold, though, because I don't... I wouldn't open this, I don't believe, from the cutoff. Maybe I would. Maybe it's closer than I think it is. I'm just going to tag it and we'll see. Is this close? I think it's closer than I think it is. But with a suited ace, I would certainly raise it. But without, I would not. All right, we got something in the chat. The Ethical Panda says, I'll sometimes jump in with a blind when I'm on stream. Streams at The Ethical Panda on Twitch. Just so my stream isn't watching me sit out 3 hands to start the session. I'm sure I could just start a table a few minutes before the stream, but that level of pre-planned scheduling, I'm just not about that life. Fair. Yeah, so when I see someone do that, it's like a little thing in my head saying like, okay, there's a good chance that this player is just like trying to get in on the action right away because they're impatient and they really want to gamble. But at the same time, like, there can be like, oh, I'm streaming whatever, I'll post just so you have something to watch. Let's get right into the action. That makes plenty of sense to me. And in addition to that, it's like the software's weird. It's buggy. I used to post in weird positions all the time because I had weights for big blind selected in the software, but it just like ignored it. It just didn't work. And I've had that happen on multiple platforms. That doesn't seem to be a big issue here anymore. Okay, ace 9 4 king. I think this is a fold. A lot of ace king I'm going to play, but I'm suited to the king, not the ace. And the 9 and the 4 are rather shoddy. So, yeah, so that's just another example of one of those little pieces of data that we can look at, and it just shifts the probability spectrum, right? Like, okay, this person's a little bit more likely to not really care that much about one blind, and if they're not that likely to care that much about one blind, maybe they're not as likely to care about, a few blinds or a stack or whatever. But of course, we don't want to draw big conclusions because there's all sorts of reasons someone might choose to go ahead and post that blind. Generally, what I'll do starting stream is I do try to get a full table going. Today it was a little bit of a struggle. I got a heads up table and I played that for a minute and hoped it got full, but then I found this table and switched it in and then started the stream. But usually I'll just talk about whatever until the okay. Now I have kings, so I don't really have anything that much better. I'm gonna check again, and I could bet to just deny equity. My hand's not that strong. Hearts I'm blocking, straight draws I'm blocking. Basically now I have king jack and the 5's on board, and I'm gonna check, and I think I'm gonna win a fair amount of the time. If someone bets, I'll fold, unless it's like $1, in which case maybe I'll call. I think I'm probably gonna win this pot. I think anybody with something better would have bet here, but you never know. But yeah, the other thing I think I've realized about streaming is like that first, it's tricky because the first couple minutes of the stream, like generally people aren't there yet, right? Like we have to kind of wait for people to show up, and it's like I'm not that worried about not being that entertaining in the first minute or two because nobody's watching yet. But on the other hand, okay, this hand I'm gonna play. Do I want to raise it? Yeah, let's raise. Ace, king, queen, strong. The 8 is not super helpful when it's paired with the king and the queen, as again that same straight thing. And then here I flop nothing, and I'm just gonna check. But on the other hand, the VOD, right? I don't know, is it view on demand or video on demand? Whatever. The old video, when somebody comes and they try to watch, I'll keep checking. I'm losing to any pocket pair and a 10. I don't think a 10 is very common here. And I think there's a reasonable chance my ace king is good, but I can't improve. I can't make anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and fold. But yeah, I think when people go and watch the video from before, like when the first couple minutes are like, are we live? Are we live? What's going on? Are we here? I think that can maybe be a little off-putting. People like seasoned Twitchers will just like, go ahead and just fast forward a little bit through that video to, okay, now they're playing, now they're doing their thing. All right, 9765 with a gap at the top. The gap at the top is the key component here for me. Kind of tempting to over limp. There's technically really only one real limper, right? This other person, again, we have a poster from the low jack. So, that's a good sign. Although maybe they're a streamer who's trying to entertain their audience. I don't know. But generally a good sign. But yeah, I feel you on that struggle between like trying to get right into the action and like trying to play good poker. It's a balance, and I feel much more comfortable interacting with the chat while playing compared to before. Again, I'm generally streaming with a delay, so that makes the chat interaction a little less spontaneous, a little less fluid. And sort of for that reason, since it's like that anyway, ooh, okay, they flopped a set and they would have beat our nut straight, which, wouldn't have been the nuts on the river. Would have been a very interesting flop where we had the overwrap and they had the set. But yeah, it's just, let's raise. But I don't know. Right. So what was I going to say? I was going to say, because I know I'm not going to respond in a timely fashion anyway, I feel like I'm like, well, I'm not going to pressure myself too much that way. I'm going to respond when I can, when there's a break between hands. Like if somebody puts something in right now, I would be focusing on this hand first. Ace Queen 9-6 double suited. I feel like this is quite possibly a hand that I'm supposed to call a 3-bet with. I'm not sure. This person hasn't 3-bet yet. They've not been super aggressive, so I think they're going to be weighted towards ace-ace. This was also probably a decent 4-betting hand. I'm going to go ahead and call, catch a flop, and find out later. Nut flush draw. I think I'm going to be up against like ace-ace a good amount here. They could have a hand like jack-jack that decided to check it back. They could have just kind of an airball. I'm like sort of tempted to check raise all in and put them in a really annoying spot. If they have a hand like ace-king, I really don't want them to just win. On the other hand, okay, let's see, 3-1, out of position. The board is already paired. They could have checked back a hand like jack-jack. I think that would be a little silly to take this line with it. I think they most likely have aces, and I really just want to jam it, but I'm going to fold. There's just not really ways that I'm going to be able to play this hand with a lot of confidence on the river. I'm going to mark that hand, though. I think it's fairly interesting, and it is possible that I misplayed every street. So I think in the past I would have just folded pre-flop, and I think that's okay to kind of try to sort of keep ourselves out of situations where we know we're not going to really know what we're doing. But I think if we do that for too long, what happens is we end up not facing those situations, not challenging ourselves in that way, and not really growing as a player. So that's that's not great, right? That's not really what we're looking for. And there's on the other side of the coin, there's getting to the point where we like want to make a particular play, want to get involved in pots, and so we're using, I want to put myself in these situations as like an excuse to play hands that we shouldn't be playing. But in that spot, I looked at it and I thought, okay, I think I probably am supposed to call this 3-bet because I have the good suits, because everything connects fairly well, but not really that well. So I think giving ourselves kind of permission to make a mistake that might be costly, but that, like, I did what I thought was probably the best play in that spot, knowing that it might put me in some uncomfortable situations. And I think I want to do that more and more, and then address those uncomfortable situations and say, why is this situation uncomfortable? What is it about this that's making it uncomfortable for me? Well, it's a large pot. My opponent has the initiative, and I have a hand that I don't know I'm going to be able to play in a really clear, straightforward fashion. If I had a pair with that, I'd probably just end up getting it in, I think. I certainly don't fold the turn if the board's unpaired for that half pot bet. So a lot of things I could have done differently in that hand, but I think it's important to allow myself to get in situations like that where I'm then going to be forced to think about some things that I hadn't been thinking about as much in the past. And also just to go with like, yeah, I think this is the correct play pre-flop. That's what I'm going to make. I'll check it out later. Let's see. We have some more. Let's see. Your VPIP is 32, which I know is high for what you often talk about. Do you think this is just variance and you're getting more good hands than normal? You're playing a bit loose or trying a bit of a new strategy? This is curiosity, not critique. Yeah, I think it's mostly variance. You know. Also, you'll notice the seat on my right is vacant. VPIP's going to be higher five-handed than it is six-handed. And there were a couple of vacant seats for a while, so I was playing four-handed a lot. So I think as much as anything, it's probably a product of the number of players at the table. And then secondly, just having, having been dealt a fair number of reasonable hands. This is a hand that I would have opened on the button, but with two limpers not suited to the ace, I'm going to go ahead and fold it. And I will mark it for, we'll just take a look at that and check that assertion of this being a button opening hand, and then think about whether or not it's, correct. Whether or not I should raise it against limpers, I'm fairly confident that I should not. But yeah, I mean, in terms of trying a new strategy, I'd say my strategy is evolving every day. I'm kind of sanding down the corners of my pre-flop strategy. I don't believe this is a hand. Oh, this might be a little closer than I thought it was, but I think it's a fold still. Yeah, never mind. I think that's a fairly clear fold. But yeah, I think, looking at our own stats, I think um, it can be helpful. In the long run, it's super helpful, right? But in the short run, like session stats, the other day I was rocking a 0 VPIP. I mean, I literally, I did not put money in the pot pre-flop voluntarily for, I don't know, it was like 10 or 16 or some ridiculous number of hands. And then it was like, my VPIP was like 4 at one point. So that means I must have put in 1 out of like 25, 26, whatever hands, right? So that wasn't like me playing super tight. There were 1 or 2 spots where I think I could have put money in but didn't. But overall, it was much more just, yeah, I just didn't have the hands, And here so far today, I've had, I think, a good number of pretty good hands that have been like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. That have been good enough to raise, good enough to play, but not the best. And like now it's down to 29, right? We're playing more five-handed. I expect it's going to continue going down for a little while, unless I get a rash of good hands. All right, I will fold. And top off. And we have a new player on the right-hand side who, oh, they just topped up. Okay, interesting. And King 9, 7, 3, I think clear fold. So, in this game, all of my opponents are very loose. How's that going to affect things like my stats? If people are limping ahead of me, I'm going to play fewer hands than if everyone's folding ahead of me, but maybe more hands than if people are raising ahead of me. So, I don't know exactly how that's going to affect what stats I end up playing. But I think it's something to, maybe be peripherally aware of, but not give too much consideration to in the short run. But like check out, like, yeah, if you play 1,000 hands, in a day or in a week or however long, if you go back and you look at that and your VPIP's like 40 or even like 35 or even like, 28, and you think normally you want more of like a 22 for the strategy that you're going for, over 1,000 hands, that's probably significant, right? I mean, you want to filter for 5 or 6 handed, probably. Make sure that, short-handed tables aren't having a big role in that. But over the course of, I'd say, less than 100 hands, it's probably not going to be super accurate, like in terms of within like a 10-hand band. I don't know. That's the sort of thing that you actually can mathematically figure out sort of what the confidence intervals are. Like if your VPIP's a certain number over however many hands, there's a range of like, it's going to be 99% certain that it's between this and this is your true VPIP, right? Ignoring variance. All right, sixes. Yeah, great. Okay, ace queen, nice. If I had a suit, pretty good hand. No suit, not very good hand. Let's sit back and watch this hand. There's been a raise and a half pot bet. And everybody wants some. Lots of flush draws. I mean, possible. The higher cards aren't blocked. Straight draws, like wheel draws. After the turn checks through, I feel like it's unlikely someone's going to have a boat now because I think two pair or a set usually get bet there. Yeah, so that one player had a 9 high flush draw and nines and a deuce, and then the other player had the bigger flush draw. But when they got two calls on the flop, I think they decided to not keep betting. And as we can see, I haven't really gotten any good hands for the last 5 or 10 minutes, and now my VPIP's down to 26, and that's so it's normalizing. We're getting towards the number of hands where it's gonna be over 42 hands. If I look at someone's stats and they're this, I'll be like, okay, they're like a tight aggressive player, right? They might be on the lag tag side, like a little looser for a good player, or maybe they're considerably tighter than this. But clearly you look at that and you're like, okay, over 43 hands, that's clearly someone who's trying to play well. Whether or not they're choosing the best hands to do that with, it's unclear, but they're choosing about the right number of hands. If I look at this player two to my left, right, player number 6, they're 34-11 over a similar time frame, right, over 47 hands. I think I observed a few hands of them before I got dealt in. And if we look at that, they're playing slightly too many hands. It's possible that they're playing a correct number of hands. Their main thing is we can look at the gap between the VPIP and the PFR, and it's like 23, right? It's clear, and we've seen them open limp, that they're playing too many hands passively, but their raising range is probably going to be pretty strong and reasonable. And yeah, so like we can look at that and be like, that's kind of like a soft player, but like they're not way out of line. They might not be particularly bad. Meanwhile, we see a 63, an 83, and a 65 over various different samples, and we don't know exactly how close those are to their true stats, but we can say like, they're playing a lot of hands, right? And if we look at any hand that gets to showdown, a lot of the times we're like, yeah, that maybe should have considered putting that in the muck, but we're happy you didn't. Even if it beats us by you rivering a 4-outer, we're happy for you. This is why Pot Limit Omaha is such a great game to play. Okay, I flopped the backdoor nut flush draw, a gut shot, bottom pair, and a blocker to the regular flush draw. I'm going to check, but this is the sort of hand where heads up, this would be kind of a lot of stuff to have, and I think it would be a decent hand to bet because our opponents are just less likely to have connected with this board because every card in my hand blocks something on the board, right? The 8 blocks straight draws and heart draws. The 3 blocks, a 3. I'm going to check. Now I have 2 gut shots. The 9 no longer makes me the nuts, but now the queen makes me the nuts. The king also being an overcard, very possible for someone to hit it, to have a hand like, king 3 maybe. Now I think my hand's almost definitely good. I don't think I can get very much money here, so I'm going to bet like 119. I don't know. I'm just making up a number that seems like you see stuff like sold for that in the grocery store, and it's like, oh, that's pretty cheap. I would bet 99 cents if I could, but $1 is the minimum. Okay. $1 is the minimum. So Yeah. All right. I'm going to relax a little bit. Where are we in the session? We are 45 minutes in. So at 45 minutes, I could call it, and I've been thinking about going with like a kind of shorter stream length or shorter like shorter session and more review. I feel like maybe my streams are a little review heavy, and that's not necessarily to everyone's tastes. Um, but yeah, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 hands to review. That's not a lot. So I'm going to play a few more orbits. This game is so good that I really hate to leave it. Not that I've really. When's the last time I VPIP'd? Yeah, that the one that I won was the big blind. I didn't even put money in voluntarily. King Jack 9 with a suited king. It's like, oh, I've got. There's a 4. There's a 4. With a 4, I just am not going to play this hand. And oh, now they're making a lot of sounds outside. Not good sounds. That's annoying. Oh well. Yeah, so shall I sit out the next blind? I shall. Let's go ahead and do that, even though this game is so good. All right. 6-5-4 deuce. Like, heads up, I think this has some merit. I don't think I can raise it from the button even in a I'm curious about this hand though, because I believe it is significantly too weak. Wow, that's very loud. But I want to double check that assertion, right? I want to make sure that that is correct and that I'm not undervaluing it. And I'm very confident that I fold this from the cutoff. The question is really like, is this a hand I can play from the button or nay? All right, we're going to get a couple more hands here. Not hands of significance. And I don't know, it's hilarious to me that right after the Ethical Panda asked the question about my VPIP currently being 32, I was like, well, it'll probably go down. I don't think I did anything differently to try and have it go down, but now it's 23, which is roughly, it's usually in the 22, 23 range in these games. So, like immediate results, but not deliberate. That's just, that's just how it goes, right? Sometimes you catch a frozen wave of cards, and not really cold cards. Just, well, there's a lot of different ways of expressing things in poker. So, basically running cold, but not running bad, because like I don't have any hands where I can get in trouble in this period, right? It's like this is usually way better than those times when everything is when you get a bunch of hands. Like the worst thing in poker, of course, is to get a bunch of good hands, good starting hands that then lose. Like that's that's expensive. That's bad. Okay, so I'm gonna open up the PLO matrix. We're gonna have that open, and I will open up my hand review and replay all hands in report. We'll bring that over here, and then this hand we can watch the end of this hand. We can. I don't know. We don't have to. It's not. There's nothing to see there. There's nothing going on. The session's over, and now it is time for the session review. And honestly, I think the thing about these about streaming every day that's been the most helpful for me has been forcing myself to do a session review every single day and just having that habit and having it feel very natural. I think doing this is just the most efficient way to improve your poker game. If you every session, at the end of the session, just look back, mark some hands, look back at the hands you marked. Sometimes even just look back at the session, for someone like the Ethical Panda, if you're streaming poker, go back and watch your stream, You know, I mean, on the one, first of all, I think it can make you a better streamer. When I watch my stream, I'm like, oh, okay, do this. I notice when I talk with my hands, then the camera goes out of focus. So maybe I'll stop doing that so much. I don't know. But also just as a poker player, and if you don't stream, you can still download OBS Studio and record yourself playing, and then watch what you do. There's, sometimes the first time I recorded myself, I went back and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I missed such and such that happened at the table. It was really eye-opening, right? So I think there can be a lot of value in that. Okay, here, I also think that this is probably the most educational part of the stream in terms of anybody watching with an eye to try to improve their poker game. I think this is probably the part that will be most helpful. It might also be the least entertaining part. I don't know. I'm sure it depends on the audience, but I'm going to keep doing it for a while anyway because I think it should be actually useful. All right, so, ooh, interesting. Okay, so I was not wrong about this. I was wrong to question myself, except I wasn't, because you should always question yourself until you're, reach a higher level of certainty in your knowledge. Okay, 6-5-4 deuce single suited is clear fold from button. Even 6-5-4-3 single suited is fold from button. So that means this is like not even close. And I will go back and look at the cutoff double suited, right? Let's see, what about double suited? Double suited, this is a raise, right? So 6-5-4-2 double suited is raise call from cutoff. Yeah. So as is 6-5-4-3, but not 6-4-3-2, which is a fold. Okay, so now we know that, right? Just a little tidbit that we can take away, put in our pocket, and a hand like that, if I see it double suited, I can open it in the cutoff. If I see it on the button, I can open it on the button. But if I'm single suited, trash. It's just trash. And you know what? I'm going to go one step deeper, and I'm going to look under the gun, 6-5-4-3, 2. So that double suited actually is even a low jack open. Oops. Let's go back one. And so 6-5-4-3 or 6-5-4-2 double suited is even an RFI call from low jack. So this hand double suited is actually quite good, right? We can raise it from any position and call a raise. So that just speaks to that double suitedness. It's like if we're gonna end up heads up, it gives us a lot of equity, even though our flush draws are very small. Those flush draws are going to give us additional equity on more boards that we're going to be able to play more aggressively. We're going to be able to stack off on more boards, and we'll have some straight draws, but then having a backdoor flush draw or a flush draw to go with those straight draws can yield a very good hand. All right, so there's 2 limps, and first assertion was I am going to raise this on the button. Is this correct? Ace-9 single suited, 8-5. Ace-9 single suited, Ace-5 is a raise fold from button. So with the bad suit and raise call with good suit, Ace-9-8-5 bad suit is RFI fold from button. Ace-9-8-5 good suit is RFI call from button. Now let's look at what would I do from like the hijack or maybe the cutoff with this exact hand. First we'll look at cutoff, because I think that might be more reasonable. Yes, there's 2 people in, but oh no, they both limped. Yeah, they both limped. I was thinking that this was a poster. It is not. So let's just look at hijack. Let's see, what do I do in the hijack with a hand like this? Ace-9. Ace-9, 8-5 is a fold. Ace-9, 8-5 bad suit is fold from hijack. Ace-9, 8-5 good suit is RFI call call IP fold out of position. All right, something like that, right? Ace 987 bad suit is RFI from hijack. RFI fold. Maybe I'll just, that. Yeah. Now we have more abbreviations. Okay. This is an ugly looking note. It's fine. I'm at some point going to assemble all of these into some sort of a book type thing that I think will be a very helpful study tool for me that I will myself use, but also that I might package into some sort of saleable product or just thing that other people might get some value out of and share with followers or whatever. It's based off of data from the matrix, so I'm not quite sure in terms of what I can do with it or not. All right, so I raise the cutoff, super clear open raise, and I get 3-bet by the button. So we're going to go cutoff, RFI, look at ace queen double suited, 9-6 is going to be a raise call. Very clear raise call. We're raise folding very few hands in this spot. With the ace queen double suited variety, basically we need like a 7 deuce or a 6 deuce, or if we're bad suit, which means we're suited to the ace and then suited to like 9-4 or so. Yeah, this is not so much just for this hand, but ace queen 9-6 double suited is very clear RFI call from cutoff versus button. As are most ace queen double suited. Some better ace queen double suited is RFI 4-bet, and especially, let's see, especially out of position, right? We're actually going to 4-bet more hands out of position than in position, because 4-betting mitigates our positional disadvantage, makes stacks shorter, and then, you know, maybe they can fold and we don't even have to play a pot out of position. But if we do, the SPR will be below 1, and it'll be, you know, a much easier spot to play, much easier. We will be able to realize much more of our equity. Only ace queen double suited we raise fold is with truly tragic side cards. And I don't need to be that much more specific. It's just like if I have ace queen and like 7 deuce, I'll be like, yeah, I know this clearly falls under that, right? And actually even ace queen 7 deuce in position with a good suit to the ace and the queen, I actually can call. But let's proceed with this hand. I flopped the nut flush draw on a board that's very good for ace ace. Of course, they can be concerned that I have jack jack, and maybe I have a dangling 3. Although, as we've seen, the 3 is the card, you know, the second most likely card to be folded after the deuce. So I think a check back here makes some sense, but they could just go ahead and go pot and pot river, trying to get value from kings. If they have aces, though, they don't have the ace of diamonds, because I have that. So the aces that they'd want to check back would probably, I think, be the ones without the diamonds. Again, I'm not super confident in these scenarios. My opponent has been a loose player, but on the tighter side with their raises. We haven't seen them 3-bet before. So I don't think they have to have ace-ace, but I think they're going to be more ace-ace heavy than sort of a more well-rounded player who maybe 3-bets a little more aggressively, has more rundowns. Here, they decide to half pot it, and I'm like really torn. I'm really tempted to just be like, you just have like 2 pair most of the time. Like, let's just, you know, let's put money in and see what do you want to do, you know. And against kings, I'm not in that bad of shape, but you know, I don't trust this opponent to fold all that much. And on the turn here, my equity's a lot worse than it was on the flop, and they can have aces with hearts, and if they do that, then I mean, I've got a flush draw, period, right? So I went ahead and folded. I don't really like peeling here that much either, because like, if I make my diamond, I don't think I have very good implied odds. And if I don't make my diamond, I think I just lose most of the time. I don't have any blockers to hearts. I can't like bluff there. So I don't know. I'm okay-ish with this, but it feels uncomfortable, and that's an uncomfortable spot, and that's fine. Hopefully there's some growth from, you know, from looking at the spot, thinking about it, reviewing it. And maybe I'll post it on a forum or something. I'm going to get into doing more of that. I'm going to today I'm going to start posting one hand every day from the session, get some feedback, and then hopefully, continue growing as a player through that as well. There are many great communities of poker players online where we can get a lot of help with our games and help others with their games as well. Okay. And so that last hand is where I had the 32 VPIP. Ace King 9-4. This hand I folded, and I feel pretty good about that. I think the 9 and the 4 and being bad suit are reasons to go ahead and fold. And it looks like this is actually close, but it's a fold. So specifically, Ace King 9-4 bad suit is fold from hijack. Ace King 9-4 good suit is RFI fold from hijack. So single suited. Ace King 9-5 bad suit is also fold, but everything else close is raise fold from hijack. Mostly just good suit, A.K.A. single suited, that raise calls, right? So if you raise a hand, basically if you have the ace and the king in the hijack, if you're suited to the ace, you're gonna raise. And if you have your side cards are good to go with that, you're gonna call a raise. If you're only suited to the king though, unless your side cards are like 2 more Broadway cards, right, you're basically gonna fold. Also 5-4 out of position, no, in position is gonna call. So whatever, that's good. I like the fold, and we've gained a little bit more specificity in terms of how we're playing. All right, so this I folded, right? And the question is this a fold in the cutoff, but also my assertion that I should raise this on the button? I want to verify that. 6 single suited. I actually feel very confident in that. Let's double check it though. 6-6 with ace 5. Yes, even with the bad suit, this is a raise call actually. So 6-6 ace 5 bad suit is raise call from button. But everything worse is a fold. So this is bottom of range. Bottom of range. Right? With the suited ace, we're much happier. And if I just go back and say, okay, what about in the cutoff? What am I doing with this hand in the cutoff? We'll take a look, and is a fold, right? So same hand is fold in cutoff, thus fold versus single limper. And if you want to say, well, this limper's so loose that maybe you can raise a hand like this, okay. My counter argument would be, this is the bottom of our button range, right? So hands that I might fold here in the cutoff, that I would fold in the cutoff, unless usually against a limper, would be like a6-6-3 with a good suit. Maybe that's the one that I want to be raising here, because I'm going to get multi-way and I'm going to have a suited ace and a pair of 6s. Whereas this hand, because I don't have the suited ace, I'm less like, I can't like flush over flush someone really. I think I stand by this fold, but I do recognize that maybe somewhere between the cutoff range and the button range is what we want to ISO this player with, or raise, because let's face it, we're not going to ISO that much when we have these 2 very loose players behind us. Okay, so I decided to fold this. What range should I use here? I think just my regular cutoff range is reasonable, because this player did not limp. They posted in the hijack, I guess. So that's, that's going to be, there's like extra dead money in the pot, right? So maybe I even go wider than my cutoff range. But let's see if this hand's in my cutoff range. It's king, queen, single suited with a jack and a 7, but bad suit. It's a fold. And good suit, it's a raise. So I think I had this pegged pretty well. I feel like I'm clearly getting better at understanding which hands are going to be played in which spots, and that's just the product of looking things up in the matrix every day, literally every day, right? You know, when we develop these daily habits over time, we get better at stuff. It's just when we develop healthy daily habits that are constructive, then we get better at stuff just by doing it day after day. And it might be a slow process, but it gets us, you know, to better, right? You don't get perfect by going practice, but you get better and better and better. Okay, enough of that. King, Queen, Jack 7 single suited is fold in cutoff. Bad suit, RFI, fold, good suit. All right, simple. Yeah, that's it. Basically, yeah, we'll go with that. I want to say more, but I won't. But no, I will say more. That kind of says it, but very close and just beneath bottom of range. So King, Queen, Jack 8. Bad suit is RFI fold. Good. Okay, so, you know, as I was saying, like, yeah, I think if that 8 was an 8, if the 7 was an 8, I would play it. I believe I said that. So maybe I'll go back and watch my stream and see whether I did. Except at the end, I'll be like, oh, I have to go back and I'll have to remember. All right, I think this is a clear open, but let's take a look. Hijack, right? Double suited hands are good, and hands that have 3 cards in a row are good, and being suited to a king is good. So there's a lot of good things going on with this hand. And yes, this is a raise call. Let's go ahead and make a note of that. King 987 double suited is raise, is RFI call from hijack. Let's see, King 986 and King 976 double suited are as well. All other King 9 double suited is fold from hijack. Okay, simple, right? So this hand, very pretty. If you make the 7 a 6, cool, we still do it. If you make the 8 a 6, cool, we still do it. Anything else, any other permutations are just going to be folds. Do we get a flop with this hand? Yes, we do. Oh, this hand was interesting. Oh, I'm going to have to see what they had tomorrow. I flop middle pair. There's an ace on board. I'm going to have the ace-ace advantage, but we don't want to do a ton of c-betting out of position. That's my understanding. That's something I learned from PLO Launchpad. That's something that I want to continue to try and develop and get a better understanding of. But so sometimes some ace-ace we should probably check as well, as there's probably not a ton to get value from on this board, and maybe hope that somebody spikes an underset with like a jack or a queen or something. But on this board, now I turn to pair, right? Kings and 7s. And when my opponent checks back the flop, I have to think about, like, what's their range? Are they going to have sets of aces? Well, they didn't 3-bet pre-flop, so they probably shouldn't have a lot of ace-ace. When they check back, I don't think they have a lot of 7-7 or 5-5. Maybe they're trying to let me make something, but that doesn't seem like a great plan. And I don't think a lot of 2-pair either, right? So maybe they can have some ace with some random other cards. They can have, like, they're probably not going to have really strong wraps either, because I think they bet those. So they can have some kind of straight draw stuff. They can certainly have backdoor spades or hearts or clubs. So I bet half pot, because I'm thinking, well, kings and 7s are probably good here, and I still have that gutter. And they go ahead and do this. And this is weird, I think. This is not quite pot, right? This is 3/4 pot, I guess. Full pot, they could make it like 20. 4 plus 4 plus 8, 16 on top of the 4 would be 20. So, like, what are they doing this with? I think I'm mostly repping king-king. And would I have gone bigger here? I don't know. I could. Ace-ace I probably mostly don't have, because I mostly bet the flop. But still, I'm more likely to have it than they are, in my opinion. King-king seems like very likely that I raised with kings, and the flop came ace high, and I checked. And then I turned to king, and I was like, okay, let's go. Spades also possible. I think it's highly likely that they had some sort of big draw here. The problem is my hand doesn't play that well out of position against this large bet. I don't really know what else to do here, except I know that my spidey sense is tingling and something doesn't feel right. It's possible that they slow played a hand like 5-5 or 7-7 or even ace-ace. or maybe that they have ace king, but all those seem a little odd, and I feel much more likely that they have some kind of nonsense, maybe a big draw, right? Maybe queen jack 10 with spades, but like nonetheless, I'm giving them a pretty strong side eye here. But it's hard for me to fight with this hand, right? If I had a set of kings, I'd be like, oh, you raised now, and like maybe I get stacked by ace ace, but I probably just like get the money in and you know, see what happens. And they probably have a big draw then. Okay, so I let them win the hand because it's hard to fight out of position, right? That's one of the reasons I check so much in that spot. And not much more to say about that hand beyond that. Let's go double check. Yep, okay. And what else? Nines with a 7 and a 6. We've got a bunch of limpers. And as I've been saying, I don't want to over limp a whole lot in the small blind, but this seems like a hand that can flop really well and on a decent number of boards. You know, where in my range is this going to lie? Am I going to play a hand like this in earlier positions? No, but I'm getting 9 to 1 basically to flop a 9 or some straight business, you know, and I flop a 9 and some straight business, right? I've got a gut shot straight draw, I have top set, and I have a blocker to the straight, and then a blocker to middle pair, which I don't want. I don't really want to be blocking middle pair, because I'm blocking middle set then. I'm blocking bottom 2, I'm blocking top 2, like really hardcore. So I check. I think a bet is fine, and I had talked during the hands like maybe I want to be check raising here. With the 6 blocker, I think I can lead out. Otherwise, I would just play this straight up as a boat draw. I'm also blocking the 7s, so I kind of think maybe this is just like bet it and get it. But I don't hate my play here. Nobody else wants to put any money in. The 4, now 6-3 also becomes a straight. But again, I have a 6. And honestly, if I pot it, 6-3 shouldn't be like feeling fantastic. I was the big blind, going for a check raise with 8-6, or even just check call and then, you know, see how the board runs out and put in further aggression later. Oh my goodness. Okay. I think a bet here makes sense. I've got a lot of outs to improve. If I have outs to improve. If I'm behind, I'm also blocking everything I could be behind from, and I just think it makes sense to put money in. So a couple players also decide it makes sense to put money in, and I hit the 7. So I have the stone cold nuts, right? I have 9s full of 7s, and I have a 7 in my hand, so quad 7s are impossible. So I want to get all the money in if someone wants to do it with me, right? And I can't even chop. Like, somebody can't even chop with me. The best hand they can have is the last 7 and the last 9 for 7s full of 9s. I have 9s full of 7s. I would beat them. So how do you try to get the money in here? Well, first of all, I need someone to have a full house, or I'm probably not going to be able to get the money in. Someone having a straight is basically the only other hand that I think I'm really going to get value from. So if they have a full house, I think if I check, I think they're going to bet. So going for a check raise here, I think makes a lot more sense than what I did full pot size bet. I don't like my play at all. I think this is a clear mistake. Yes, I have the nuts, so put a lot of money in, right? But I don't think this is going to get the money in the best way. If they have 4-4 or 5-5 or 7-4, 7-5 or 7-9 even. 7-9 maybe, you know, we'll call this and might even raise. But all those other fulls, I think if I checked it, they would bet them, and then I could come over the top, and they'd be like, really? And then they would probably call. So I don't like this play. I think either checking or making that like $3 bet, $4 bet, where somebody maybe gives me a curiosity call with a 7 or like pocket 10s, or definitely calls with a straight. Or if they have a boat, then maybe they raise that and then I come over the top. So I think either betting really small or checking was the play here. I think this was a clear mistake because of just how dominated I have the board, and the fact that it's just so hard to get calls from anything, and the only hands that are going to call me are ones that would bet themselves. So why should I put the money in? Let them put the money in, and then take it from there. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks so much for watching the stream or the video on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe. There's a button here somewhere. There's 2 other videos that you can click through to, and I have a never-ending stream of streams. And yeah, let me know what you think. If there's hands that you would have played differently, or hands that you have further questions about, let me know on YouTube. Throw the timestamp on there, and I'll be sure to respond. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. I guess it's a Monday. Have a great week. Cheers.